Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda. This is take 2 of this video. Why is it take 2? Because I was doing my thing, just filming this video, and all of a sudden my daughter, oops, dropped something. My daughter came over there and just stood over me, and apparently I had to take her to the store. That child needs to get her driver's license. She also needs to get her permit first, but we're working on it. Teenagers, am I right? Anyway, I'm Melinda. Welcome to Web of Stories. I am here with my weekly wrap-up, which will be pretty short because I only finished 2 books this week. But housekeeping, first of all, t-shirt check. Yes, this is a Bard Room t-shirt. This is not a Bard Room video, but I have Bard Room business. Usually, to choose our plays, we draw it out of this tin right here. But in September, we do something a little different. Now that the Shake-tember announcements have gone out, on my Discord in the thread called the Bard Room, there is a poll of the Shake-tember plays that we have not already read. We are not rereading Pericles. And you have until August 17th to vote on which one you'd like to do. The choices are Richard II, Measure for Measure, As You Like It, and Julius Caesar. And the poll goes until August 7th, and I will announce the winner on a video the Wednesday after that, because Wednesdays are Wednesdays with Will. But if you go to my Discord after the 17th, you'll be able to see who wins. So you'll get a sneak peek. Anyway, if you're interested in joining us for the Bard Room, or if you just have to vote, there you go. Second of all, second housekeeping business. This is going to be my last video for a little over a week. I'm going to have a dead week while I go on vacation. So I will not be putting any new videos out next week. However, on my community posts for the weekdays of next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm doing sort of flashbacks and posting some of my older videos if you're interested. So I'm gone, but not really. During the time on vacation, if I have any YouTube time, which I probably will, I won't be watching any videos people post in that time, but I will be trying to catch up on my quite large backlog of videos I have to watch. And of course, try to catch up on comments. But anyway, that's what's going on. So if I disappear, when I disappear, there's nothing wrong. I'm just on vacation. I'll be back on the 19th, I think, is the day I'll be back. The 19th will be the next video I have. It's actually already up and going. It's already uploaded and everything. So there you go. So let's get to the books I finished this week. As I said, I finished 2. One I've been working on for a long time, and one I flew through. So let's start with the one I've been working on for a long time. As everyone knows, July is Jane Austen July, and I did not finish my Jane Austen book in July, but I did finish it on August 4th. And that is Mansfield Park. This is what Bookish Best Friend and I buddy read this year for Jane Austen July. For those of you who don't know my history with Jane Austen, I read all of Jane Austen's novels when I was in college for college classes. And of course, when you read novels in English classes at college, university, there's lots of essay writing and dissecting and all that. That worked great for the Brontës, but it ruined Jane Austen for me. Not sure why there was the differential there, but it is. I came out of college really not liking Jane Austen. But there has been a good amount of space between now and when I was in college, and I've decided to try and reacquaint myself with Jane Austen. So each year, Bookish Best Friend and I are buddy reading a Jane Austen novel during Jane Austen July. Last year we did, which was our first year, we did Persuasion, and I specifically chose that one because there were 2 Jane Austen novels that I could not remember. I mean, I remember reading, I know I read them, but I couldn't remember them. And Persuasion was one of them. And also, I did know that Persuasion was a second chance romance. And as far as romance tropes go, I like that one. So we started with that one, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. Was it a Bronte? No, but that's okay. I still enjoyed it. So this year, we did the other one I don't remember, which is Mansfield Park. And I will be honest, for the first 2/3 to 3/4 of a book, I had almost convinced myself that I hadn't read it because I didn't remember any of that. At about the 2/3, 3/4 point, there is a change of setting. if you read the book, you know what I mean. It's not a huge spoiler, but there's a change of setting. And at that point, I was like, I totally remember this. I totally remember this. So that was my sort of experience reading Mansfield Park. Sadly, neither Bookish Best Friend nor I liked this book. We had very similar feelings about it. The first issue we both had is, well, Fanny, I found her very whiny. Now, Katie at Books and Things, who really likes Mansfield Park, I think she did in a recent ranking, I think she said this was her second favorite, so she admires Fanny because of Fanny's moral fortitude and all this, and I see that. I do really see that. I don't, however, think you have to be whiny, which it hit me as whiny. Maybe it doesn't hit Katie as being whiny. I don't know. To have moral fortitude. I spent most of this book saying, Fanny, just stand up for yourself. Come on. Just, you're not a victim here. Come on. The other issue with this book is there were no characters I liked in this book. I didn't like Fanny because Fanny was benign, but she was kind of whiny, so I don't really like her. But I did not like any of the other characters in this book. None of them. Not even in a sort of, they're kind of annoying in a funny way, sort of, you know? It's like Mrs. Jennings in Sense and Sensibility. Like, she's, yeah, kind of like that. Like, you don't really like her, but you like her because she's kind of funny. No, that wasn't the case. Like, I really did not like these characters. Any of them. And Bookish Best Friend felt the same way. Also, the love story in here is a little bit cringe. So the basic story of this is Fanny is taken from her. It starts with there's three sisters. One marries a very wealthy man. One marries a sort of wealthy man who she kind of hangs on to the wealthier sister. And the youngest one marries a poor man, and the two other sisters disown her, but then they kind of reconnect. And the youngest sisters had all these children. So they decide they're going to help the sister by taking her oldest daughter and raising her, which is Fanny. And that whole thing is weird. There's a lot in there that's weird. But anyway, Fanny is raised in the house of her mother's oldest sister, who's a lord lady, whatever, and her family. And there's 2 boys and 2 girls. And she forms a close relationship with one of the boys, with Edmund, who's a little bit older. And it is always painted as such. In fact, it is articulated as such several times by the characters, more Edmund than Fanny, but still articulated as a very sibling-like relationship over and over and over and over again. So the fact that these two end up together, spoiler, sorry, is kind of gross. Also, Edwin was just like, dude, no. Edmund was like, there's a rake character in here. It is bad to say, and I'm sorry. He was more interesting, and I think Fanny would have done better with him than who she ended up with. So, this is currently in second place of my rankings of my rereads of Jane Austen books, but I've only read 2. Number 1 is currently Persuasion. So, I don't know what we're going to be reading next year. The only thing I'd really like to do is I'd like to hold Pride and Prejudice off as the last one we reread. If we go by like how I remember them, so the next one I remember the least of in that order, up to not Persuasion, Pride and Prejudice, up to Pride and Prejudice. The order would be after this: Northanger Abbey, Emma, Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice. But I don't know if we're going to stick to that. But there you go. Mansfield Park. Probably won't ever be rereading this one. I did do this as a hybrid read. I listened to the audio while I read it. I didn't start doing that, but I was having enough trouble just like, I don't want to be reading this. And so I thought, okay, maybe if I listened to it while I read it, it would go a little bit better. And it did. It did. There's another book that I'm doing that with now for kind of a different reason, but I'm starting to really like that method of reading for some books, especially classics. So there you go. Mansfield Park is done and dusted. Now, the other book I actually went through really quickly. I read it I listened to it. It was an audiobook, but not a very long one. But I listened to it in 2 days. And this is for my book club, which will be meeting, if you see this the day it drops, it'll be meeting today. tomorrow as I film this, and that is Moon of the Crusted Snow by Waubgeshig Rice. So this is one that I have had on my Libro queue for a very long time, so I was really happy when my Marginalized Authors book group chose it, because now I have to read it. But let me see. It is kind of a dystopian horror from an Indigenous viewpoint. And it is also a very certain kind of story that if you're familiar with Indigenous literature and sort of Indigenous beliefs, if you read Indigenous literature or even Indigenous adjacent literature, for example, this sort of thing is present quite frequently in William Kent Kruger's The Cork O'Connor series. This thing is something you'd be familiar with, but the story is told so well that, okay, it could be that the story is told so well, or it could be I'm clueless, one of the two. I didn't realize it was that thing until the end, but it's a really, it's, let me just kind of give you a little setup with it. So we're set in a northern Canadian town reservation with yes, Native American tribe. I can't, Anishinaabe. There we go. I said it's a hard word for me. I'm sorry. Oh, and by the way, I did this on audio, as I mentioned. Great way of doing it. It's a great narration, but also there is a lot of Anishinaabe words in it. And so it's nice to hear those pronounced. There's also names that are Anishinaabe. But so winter in the present or very near future, and a small reservation town, northern Canada, and one day power goes out, internet goes out, everything just kind of goes out. Don't know what happened. But they're like, okay, well, we've got to figure out what's kind of going on. And they have no clue what goes on. And I will tell you, you never find out what happens. Just if you're going, you're not going to find out what happens, because that's not the point of the story. So the town, which is a pretty small town, has to kind of figure out how to survive this. And because they are Indigenous and there are people in their community who have been teaching the younger generations the traditional ways that, you know, they've kind of survived the boarding schools and all that, so that these ways sort of survive. You can tell that this community is in a better place than most to handle this sort of thing. They have some skills that will definitely help them. But of course, something happens, some outsiders come, and it goes on from there. Plot ensues. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed it so much that I finished it on August 5th, and on August 6th, I started the sequel. The sequel is Moon of the Turning Leaves, or Moon on the Turning Leaves? I don't know. But I'm listening to it right now, which I'm halfway through that, and I'm really enjoying it, but it's different enough that I can't compare the two. So I'm not going to say one's better than the other at this point, because there's a fundamental difference between the two. I really enjoyed this. I think we're going to have a really good discussion about it. And it's interesting. I could also tell that this was very Canadian First Nations as opposed to American Indigenous, which is really not a good way of thinking about it, because the whole Indigenous community transcends national borders, right? Even if you think of, like, if you're in the Southwest and you hear about the Apache came from what is now Canada. So the Indigenous community transcends borders. That being said, I do think, from where I stand as an American, I do think Canada is a few steps ahead of us on the path of reconciliation than the United States. Now, the United States, if you don't know when the United States formally issued an apology to the Indigenous people for the boarding school system, because both Canada and the United States had a boarding school system. It was a little bit different, not better, not worse, just a little bit different in each country. But they both had the boarding school system. And I know Canada has been really kind of dealing with the repercussions of that. But do you know when the United States formally apologized for that? November 21st, 2024. President Biden apologized for that, which, long overdue. I'm glad he did it. Do you think that the current administration is still operating in that spirit? I don't. I don't. There's nothing whatsoever that makes me think they are operating in any sort of spirit of reconciliation with the Native people. So clearly the United States lags way behind. And because of that, I could feel like this was a Canadian story. There's things in it that just felt like, okay, this, not necessarily the Native community, but sort of the non-Native community around it, was in a place that this is going to operate this way. Had it taken place at a reservation, had this story, this thing, whatever it was, happened in a reservation in the United States, I think things would have gone a very different way because of the way the different nations are, not because of the indigenous people, but because of the worlds that they're in due to the governments. But anyway, I'm really looking forward to discussing it. I am going to reread, I am going to reread Waubgeshig Rice has a short story in this collection, Never Whistle at Night. It is the last story in this collection, and it is called, that is not it, that's someone else. It's not very long. Limbs. And I did read it, but I have not read it since reading this. So, and I do think that this is set in the same world as Moon of the Crusted Snow and Moon on the Turning Leaf. So I am going to be rereading the short story in here. But yeah, so that is my week. As I said, no videos next week other than if you go on my community post and you see it. I might be posting stuff on Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see it. But oddly enough, I will not be posting vacation stuff on Facebook until I get back. But yeah, whatever. Social media is weird. Anyway, like, subscribe, join my Discord. If you want to leave me a comment but don't know what to say, or you are just in an emoji mood, whatever, leave me an emoji that somehow symbolizes what you like to do on summer vacation, because I'm going on summer vacation and a road trip. Oh, I should tell you about what we're going to be doing on the road trip, or book-wise. That's what I meant to do. Okay, so as for reading, I am only taking my Kobo. I am taking a copy of Attack from Within by Barbara McQuaid, which is a reread for me, but I am going to be part of Margaret Pennard's Agitation August, and I probably should reread that book, so I'm prepared for it. And I will be taking Lonesome Dove. Now, I may be stopping at bookstores and stuff, but other than that, that's all I'm taking for reading. However, this is essentially a road trip, so there will be audiobooks. As luck would have it, my library hold of the audiobook of Sunrise on the Reaping has just come in. So we will be listening to Sunrise on the Reaping. I'm glad it worked out, because that's something that I know my daughter has read. She's read the original Hunger Game books. I don't know if she's read Ballad of Songbird and Snakes. However, I have the audiobook of that too. So if necessary, I can always download that again. But anyway, that's something that we can listen to. I have also re-downloaded my audiobook of Project Hail Mary. So that's another thing that we could listen to. My husband and I have already read it, but my kids haven't. And if we need more, you know what? I'll have my phone, and I have Audible, and I have Libro, and even though I have Audible and Libro, I get a lot of audiobooks out of the library. I'm really having this deal with. I had plans to cancel my Audible account because Audible. But if you want to listen to classics, you have better options on Audible, unfortunately. So I feel like I kind of have to keep my Audible subscription. And I want to keep my Libro subscription because that supports local bookstores. But I also get them out of the library. I'm just so confused. Oh, and I have one that I got from Book of the Month. So there you go. That's a whole mess I can figure out some other time. Anyway, those are my reading plans while I'm on vacation. If you want, leave me a vacation-themed emoji of your choice. I will see you on the 19th. It's the next time I will have a video go up. Like, subscribe. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.